Rama Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna,
Hare Hare,
Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama,
Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful music. Okay. I feel guilty that I cannot be like Hanumanji and devote my life to God and my Guru. I try to be of service, to feel a strong connection to God, and do my best to be a good, ethical, loving, and compassionate human being. But I also have a human life where other demands are made, and I have other responsibilities. How to deal with this? So first of all, it's really important to remember and to know that dedicating your life to God or the Guru, in any religious tradition and any lineage and any faith, none of it is saying stop being a human being. None of it is saying pretend you're not human. None of it says pretend that you don't need to eat or sleep or drink. None of it is saying pretend that you're not here in a body that has the incredible gift of the joy of the creation. I emphasize so frequently in here that, I don't think that God has made any mistakes, and it doesn't make sense to me that we would have been given a body, given a human birth, simply in order to throw it away, simply in order to pretend that we don't have it, in order to push it away, in order to suppress it or repress it or deny it. If God has given us the ability to see with these two eyes, not just our third eye, not just the inner divine eye, but if he's given us sight with these two eyes, well, we see for a reason. And I don't think it's limited to just ensuring that we don't knock into furniture as we move around or get, hit by cars as we cross the street. If that's all our eyes were for, I don't think sunsets would be so beautiful. I feel very, very deeply that God, the divine creator, has given us an incredible creation and an incredible ability to interact with that creation as humans. To see, to hear, to smell. If we weren't supposed to enjoy music, would our ears have the incredible intricacy of, when you think about it, you think about the scientific intricacy of tiny, tiny hairs along an eardrum and an ear canal that vibrate at different frequencies so that we're able to actually experience not just sound. If it were simply about preserving the body, well, we would be able to differentiate volume, something very loud, scary. Something softer and gentler, not quite so scary. But this ability to actually hear, to have the sensation, to have the perception, to have our bodies literally impacted by it, to me, is only because we're supposed to hear. We're supposed to have the joy of sound, of music, and that's why we've got the ability to be able to differentiate between such nuances of pitch, of tone, of frequency. Smell, taste, all of this is way more intricate than it needs to be if it were just about preservation of the body. And so on that level, on the level of having as the question said, a human life, well, there's nothing about a spiritual life that negates a human life. There's nothing about giving yourself in service to God or the Guru that says, and make sure that you don't enjoy any more music. Make sure that you don't smell flowers anymore. If you do smell them, don't enjoy it. Make sure not to enjoy beautiful sunsets, sunrises, art. You're living a spiritual life now, no more beauty. There's nothing like that. The distinction comes, and also one more piece, there's also nothing about a life dedicated to God and Guru that says you cannot or should not be in the world, have relationships, be married, have children. Until and unless you've taken official vows of renunciation, there's nothing about a life dedicated to spirituality that says you must be celibate forever, you must not have a family. That's true if you've taken vows of sannyas, but there's no requirement in giving your life to God and the Guru that you take those vows. In fact, the scriptures are full of stories. More than sannyasis, full of stories of household or married sages and rishis. So there's nothing about a human life that should be in any kind of contradiction to a life that's dedicated to God, to the Guru. The distinction comes in what I'm focusing on. And so a spiritual life is focused on an awareness of, for example, the body is very temporary. Whether it lasts another few days or weeks or decades, no one knows. But even if it's decades, it's short. Pleasure comes and goes, it's quite short-lived. Pleasure from external things, very short-lived. You have to keep going after it again and again and again, whether it's shopping pleasure, chocolate pleasure, eating, whatever pleasure we're getting from the outer world. Being with my friends at a party pleasure, whatever it may be. One dose of that pleasure doesn't last very long. You have to keep refilling and refilling and refilling. An awareness, I'm listing the awarenesses that a spiritual life is rooted on, none of which has anything to do with thou shalt not enjoy the beauty of creation, thou shalt forget that you are a human, none of that. But it's awarenesses of the truth of life. It's short and unpredictable and no guarantees. The pleasure and the joy, the happiness that we get from external things, very short-lived and very superficial. Parts of me may enjoy it, but it's not percolating deep into the core of my being. Another awareness, that I have no control over anything in the outer world. And so every ounce of expectation that I have of what someone else is going to do, how someone else is going to act, how someone else is going to treat me, how the traffic's going to go, how the stock market's going to go, how my position in this company is going to go. All of those things that we're attached to, they're out of our control. Which means, it doesn't mean don't be involved in them, but it means that where I have an expectation, inevitably there's going to be, as Pujya Swamiji says, frustration and depression. Because inevitably, if not today, then certainly tomorrow or the day after, those expectations are not going to be fulfilled. And the awareness that ultimately the highest purpose of life is to recognize the truth of who I am. And again, sure, enjoy yourself along the way. Absolutely. The tradition of bhakti, of devotion, is full of the teaching, really, of joy and ecstasy. It's not a path of penance. It's a path of singing and dancing and loving in ecstasy. There's nothing about it that says, forget that you're human. But it's a teaching that reminds us that there's a reason I'm here, and that reason I'm here is to experience the fullness of myself. And I can only be focused on one direction at one time. So you cannot simultaneously focus outward and focus inward at the same time. Just like you can't go north and south at the same time, or east and west at the same time. And so for every bit of energy that I'm focusing on the outer world, I'm not focusing on the inner world. And the spiritual life, the life dedicated to God, to the Guru, says, I'm here for a higher purpose. And that purpose is to let go of everything in me that keeps me blocked, that keeps me chained, that keeps me identifying as this physical, temporary, fallible body, and that doesn't let me identify as the fullness and the wholeness and the completeness and the divinity of who I am. But the outer world is very alluring. And we get distracted very quickly. There's a great story, actually, of a man who was a young man living in the ashram with his guru. And he was going to take sannyas. He was just about to take this pledge of renunciation to be ordained. But he was quite young. And he went to the guru and he said, I've been thinking. I think before I actually take this vow, that I really should go out and at least experience a little bit of the world so that later in life I shouldn't repent, I shouldn't regret that I never saw. So give me 5 years. Let me just go out and see what romance is like. Let me go out and see what having a job is like. Let me see what the world is like. I grew up in this Gurukul since I was a student here. Now I'm going to renounce. I've never been in the world. Let me just see. And so the Guru says, sure, go. So 5 years comes and goes. Another 5 years comes and goes. And one day there's a knock on the door of a family. And 2 young children answer the door, and there's an old man on the doorstep, and he says to them, is your father home? And they say, yes, yes, and they go, Dad, Dad. And the father comes to the door, and he sees the old man, and immediately he recognizes it's his guru. And the guru says, okay, are you done yet? Kids look good, you've got a nice house, you've done well. Nice smells of food coming from your kitchen. So have you experienced this? It's been 10 years, not 5. Are you satiated yet? And the man says, oh God, I'm so sorry. I can't believe how much time has gone. But I can't actually leave now. Because you see, the children are very young. And I'm the only one making any money. My wife is home taking care of the children. If I leave, what will become of them? Just give me another few years to make sure that everything's okay, that they're set and protected, that my wife is okay. So the Guru says, okay. It's clearly a Guru like Puja Swamiji. Some of the Gurus, you hear stories of Gurus who are very, very harsh and just impose their way, who know the truth. I mean, they all know the truth, but some of them impose it. Puja Swamiji's Guru used to slap him and starve him and do all sorts of things to him. But he turned around and he's actually become almost the exact opposite. The soft, the gentle, the I'll be here, I'll guide you, but I'm not gonna force. Much more like Lord Krishna with the Bhagavad Gita, where at the end of the Gita, after telling Arjuna everything, at the end he says to Arjuna, I've taught you everything, told you everything, shown you everything. But now the choice is yours. It's up to you. I'm not going to force you. No strings attached. So Puja Swamiji is much more like that, and the Guru in this story is much more like that. So he says to the man, he says, okay, no problem. So he goes away. 10 years later, he comes back, and he knocks on the door, and he hears this very, very loud dog barking inside the house, and the home is opened, and a young man answers the door, who he immediately understands is the son, who's now grown. And standing next to the son is this dog, and it's barking, barking, barking very, very loudly. But as soon as it sees the Guru on the doorstep, the dog suddenly sits down and kind of hangs its head a little bit, and the Guru says to the young man, he said, oh, this is a wonderful dog. Do you mind if I pet him for a while? Could you bring me some water? So when the young man goes into the kitchen to get water, the Guru now is alone with the dog, and he says to him, he says, look, come on. Look what's happened to you. In the name of protection, in the name of protecting them, taking care of them, you lost your first life. Now you've come back as the animal of protection, this fierce dog. Are you ready, for God's sakes? And the dog says to him, oh, Guruji, yes, you are so right, I know. He says, but actually this time is even more delicate than last time, because you see they've done so well that everybody's against them. Now everyone's trying to steal from them. Everyone's trying to harm them. Everyone's trying to grab their stuff. And now they need me more than ever. I must be here. Just give me another few years to make everything set for them. So the Guru goes. 10 years later, he comes back, knocks on the door. Again, 2 new young children open the door. And he says to them, he says, children, go up to your attic. He says, in the wall there is a safe where maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but your mom and dad, they keep, and the children say, yes, 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 we know there's a safe in the attic. And the Guru says, go up to where the safe is. And in the stone wall next to the safe, there will be an opening in that stone. In that opening, there will be a snake. Capture that snake. Don't kill it. Whatever you do, do not kill that snake, but just break its back so it doesn't hurt you. And then bring that snake to me. The children are amazed. Who's this old guy, and how does he know we have a safe in our attic? But he's very divine. He has that divine energy, and so they go, and he stays on the doorstep. And a short while later, they come back with a big, potato sack, jute bag. They've got it closed at the top, and they say to him, how did you know? You were right, there was a snake, and how did you know? He just smiles, and he says, don't worry, everything will be fine. And he takes the sack, and out of the sack, he opens it, and he grabs the snake, and he throws it over his shoulder. And he walks away, and as he walks away, he says to the snake, okay, so now I had to come back for you. Because now you realize, or now it's my duty to make you realize, there is no end. You came for a few years just to experience, but there is no end. And I'm not going to let you keep degrading yourself further and further and further, getting farther and farther away with each birth. And so I love the story because it's not that you cannot be doing God's work, doing the Guru's work in a home with a family. Sure you can. It's not that you must be living in an ashram. But the problem becomes in our attention and our focus. It's very, very difficult to be really fully dedicated and committed. Because the pulls of the world are so strong, the pulls of Maya are so strong. And the problem also is that when we're surrounded by everyone, where that is the focus and that is the attention, that becomes our mind as well. So it's not so much about being a human or not being a human. Be a human being, by all means. Give that human being all that that human being needs. But remember that the reason that we have a human birth, the reason that we've been given consciousness, it's said that the reason that only humans attain enlightenment is not that we're the pinnacle of any kind of moral or ethical evolution. In many cases we're far from it. Most of the other species are actually much better than we are. We're one of the few species that actually kills and harms for no benefit to ourselves. We're not going to eat them. They weren't necessarily invading our territory, threatening our offspring. Most other species only harm or kill for food or because they're immediately threatened. So it's not that humans are the pinnacle in any way, but what we have that no other species has, we believe, is that level of consciousness that enables us to look at the self. And in order to actually meditate, in order to actually embark on a path of Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, we need to be able to look at the self. We need to be able to say, that's just my anger. That's just my ego. That's just my fear. Oh, that's just the voice of my mother speaking. I'm not really useless. I'm not really worthless. I'm not really fat and ugly and stupid. That's just the things that my mom told me I was when I was young because she was going through a difficult time. Or those are the things my mom thought she was. And so I picked that up. Or, oh wait, I'm not really hopeless or worthless. That's actually just what this teacher told me. Because she was having a bad day or going through a divorce, or that's what my friend is going through. But I've internalized it as myself. But only if we're actually able to be conscious and to go deep within and to say, hey, wait, is that really my truth? Am I really convinced I'm that small? Or have I just been convinced by the outer world I'm that small? Am I convinced I'm that useless? That empty, that half? No. That's just the world that's convinced me that until I have a better half, I'm just the not yet better half. All of these things that play so deeply on our conscience, it's really important to understand where did these things come from, but only our consciousness enables us to do that. And so when we talk about a life dedicated to God or the Guru, it's about understanding who you are. And tragically, most of the outer world just doesn't give us that. What the outer world keeps telling us is, you are your six-pack abs or your lack of six-pack abs, and you are your waistline, and you are how much money you make, and you are the color of your skin. You are the number of followers you have, or likes you have, or friends you have. You know, you are all of these things. You are your relationships. You are what people tell you you are. This is how the outer world grooms us. And in order to really be of service to God and service to the Guru, you have to have enough empty space inside for the divine will to flow. When we're so full of our own will, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is who I am, this is how it's going to be, this is how it should be. There just isn't that space. All God, all the Guru wants of you is be a tool. Be a tool. In God's hands, in the Guru's hands. Serve. I remember when I first met Puja Swamiji, I had been here maybe a week, barely. And I had no idea I was going to stay forever. I mean, my heart wanted to, but it was far before my spiritually intoxicated brain was able to do any kind of logistic thinking or planning. And in those days, in those early days, I was really almost incoherent with ecstasy. I mean, I remember just sort of wandering through giddy, just giddy with, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And after I'd been here, maybe even it wasn't a full week, maybe it was 4 or 5 days, I finally got an opportunity to sit with Puja Swamiji, sit with him alone. And I said to him, I said, you know, I feel so blessed, so incredibly blessed by being here. Is there anything I can do for you? And he looked at me, and you have to just picture the scene. Those of you who don't know me, who don't know him, who don't know the whole sort of story, you've got to just picture a scene of a 25-year-old American girl, American woman, girl by Indian standards, a woman by American standards. In India, you're, you know, anyway. So forget it, we won't go there. So, and Puja Swamiji, who was, you know, twice my age, an Indian saint. I didn't know him except for the previous few days of just him being here. I didn't know anyone who knew him. There was no overlap of communities. I met him when I got here. We're sitting in his meeting room alone. He knows that I know nothing about India. I know nothing about Indian culture. I know nothing about anything. Just this American young woman who has had an incredible spiritual experience a few days prior. And so I say to him, is there anything I can do for you? And he looks at me. And he says, anything. And I have a degree in psychology. I had a bachelor's degree at the time. I was in the middle of a PhD program. And my last year at Stanford, I took a course from a very, very, very famous and renowned professor called Dr. Phil Zimbardo, who still is the expert in cults and brainwashing and all of that. So, you know, the Waco situation happens, and here we are, you know, CNN, here we are at Stanford University with Dr. Phil Zimbardo to tell us about what is it that would make people hold themselves up and blow themselves up. You know, what is it about brainwashing? What is it about a cult? So this was his expertise. He taught a class only for psychology majors, only for seniors, that nonetheless had a waiting list of God knows how many to get into a hall that held about 200, 250 people. I had gotten one of the only A pluses in the class that in the course of his entire career he had ever given. He had given A's, he had almost never given an A plus. And I mention this because here I was, this star student who had just gotten one of the only A pluses in a class on the psychology of mind control, barely a couple of years before this. Now I find myself in India, sitting in a room with a guru who has just asked me whether really I will give him anything. And I can hear Dr. Zimbardo's voice in my head. And intellectually I thought, just get up and walk out. Just leave like this. But I knew, my heart knew. My heart knew, and I knew that actually regardless of what he asked, I would have given him anything. And so I said, yeah, anything. And he looks at me more deeply, literally like through my eyes. And he says, you promise? And now I've got my mother shrieking in my head as well. Just get up and walk out. Just leave. But my heart knew so deeply. I had no idea what he was going to ask of me, obviously. But I knew one thing very clearly, which was whatever it was, I would have given it. And that the core truth of my being in that moment, in spite of or because of everything that had happened in the previous 25 years, this was my moment of truth. And yeah, I would have given him anything. And he keeps looking at me, and then suddenly there's just this break in the intensity. And he actually laughs, kind of bursts, sweet giggle, and he says, okay, 3 things. And he said, first, serve humanity. He said, first, serve humanity. You've been given so much. You need to use it. You need to use it to serve the world. Serve. He said, second, get closer and closer to God every day. At the end of every day, I want you to be closer to God than you were that morning. And he said, and third, he said, be happy. He said, I don't want to see you sad. And he holds out his shawl, and he says, whatever pain you have, he said, just give it to me. And just be happy. And I share that story because nowhere in there was it about be less than human. Nowhere about it. I mean, it was me who, for many, many years before he would let me do it, was saying, I want to renounce, I want to take vows of sannyasa, I want to stay here, I want to stay here. I mean, there's a lot of other stories, but it was always from my side saying, please let me stay, please don't make me go back, please let me renounce. From nowhere, from his side, was there ever a request from me to do anything other than those 3 things. So, serving God and the Guru does not take you away from being human, but it takes you away from a focus on, an attachment to the stuff that is just so fleeting in the world and so false in the world. And it creates a space in you into which grace can flow. And whether you take vows of sannyasa or you don't take vows of sannyasa, it doesn't matter either way. All that matters is that you surrender enough You surrender enough of what you think you know, of what you think you need, of who you think you are, that there's space for that grace to flow. And that's all it means. So before taking any of the other questions that came in advance, I'm happy to take any here. Yes.
Yesterday I was sharing something about working in conflict regions.
Yes.
And what I have observed is most conflicts are about identity as to who you are. So my work is then about dismantling those identities.
Yes.
And but the challenge is that while in that process you start understanding the way we understand the whole concept of power, that shifts. And in the self-awareness aspect, the power is from inside.
Mm-hmm.
It is very inclusive, compassionate, full of love. But the power that drives the world is about control.
Of course.
Supremacy.
Yes.
And both the worlds I'm seeing kind of they are coexisting,
Mm-hmm.
but the world of self-transcendence
Mm-hmm.
has to be mainstream.
So what's the question?
So question is, how does one translate self-transcendence into political consciousness?
How do we translate self-transcendence into politics? Well, the difficulty of the question does not undermine the importance of it, because actually this is what's required today. The political situations we are in the vast majority of cases, not 100%, but the vast majority of them, are because we've gotten ourselves there. It would be really easy if we could look at the world and we could say, well, the democracies of the world are doing great because, see, when the people have the choice, they make the right choice. And the only problems come in the dictatorships. But unfortunately, that's not true. Many of the democracies of the world are in as much of a difficult situation as dictatorships of the world, politically. And so we have to ask ourselves, well, what are we voting for? Because to just start from the top down doesn't really hit at the root of the problem. I'll share a personal piece here. I try not to talk about politics here, and I'm not actually going to talk about politics, but it's important to just give the example of this. After the recent elections in America, I had a very deep personal experience to that, because the outcome was the exact opposite of what I had thought it would be. It was the exact opposite of what everyone I knew thought it was going to be. And what it made me realize was, number one, I don't actually know the people of the country that I'm from. And number two, what it made me realize is there is an element of fear and anger that pervades an enormous percentage of the people of the country, that symbolizes freedom, that symbolizes prosperity. And what is it that is leading much fear and so much anger that we are voting out of those emotions. And I mention that here because when we talk about the self-transcendence and bringing it into a situation of politics, well, we're only going to make political decisions, assuming that we live in democracies, that are based on what our ultimate goal is. If my goal is rooted in scarcity, fear, separation, I'm going to vote for leaders who embody that. I'm going to vote for leaders who stoke the fires of that. And so if we want political leaders who are ones who take us to a better world, not just for a tiny, tiny, tiny minority, but actually a better world for all, we have to overcome our own fear, our own anger, our own contraction and constriction. Because that's what fear does. See, fear literally causes us neurologically to contract. If I'm being chased by a wild animal, or if someone came in here with a gun, chances are we no longer would notice the tiles on the walls or the, color of the drapes or things like that. We'd be so focused visually, experientially, on running from the animal, of running from the person with the gun or fighting him off. When I'm in fear, my whole worldview contracts. And it becomes, in fear, self-preservation, which is all about me. And so if that's how I'm living, I'm going to vote for someone, A, who stokes that, B, who gives me assurances, real or false, that they are going to keep out the objects of my fear. So that they're going to keep away those threats. Whether it's people of different colors, whether it's people of different races, people of different religions. I will be the one to protect you. Hence, money that could and should be used to feed people, to educate them, is used to build up our military, so that instead of being able to blow up the world only 10 times, now we can blow it up God knows how many hundreds of times, because, well, we've only got one world, but we should be sure that we could blow it up hundreds of times. Because we're somehow weaker if we can only blow it up 50 times and someone else could blow it up 100 times. But all of that comes out of fear. It's only when we're able to actually take a deep breath into comfort, into security, into safety, into wholeness, that we can see the absurdity of such a position. And so our spiritual work, which by the way should be both transcendent and immanent, meaning our spiritual work is not just about transcending the self, it's about being here in the self. It's both. It's the tree that's rooted in the soil with roots that are very, very, very deep, and therefore the ability to go high, to transcend. We're not looking to negate the self. We're looking to expand the self, to have roots that are very, very deep in truth, in the truth of who I am, that capital S self, and then to from those roots to grow and expand my consciousness such that my sense of self includes all of the others. But I can only do that if my roots are deep, which is where my spiritual practice is important. If I'm not rooted in faith, yeah, I'm going to be afraid. Everyone is a threat. If I'm not rooted in peace, I'm going to be very easy to be co-opted by a made-up threat. Those people, they're coming after your job. They're coming after your money. They're coming, whatever it may be. If I'm not rooted, really grounded in truth, if I'm primed already for fear, I'm going to be very easily co-opted. Also, lastly, if I'm dissatisfied, we have this epidemic of dissatisfaction. And I'm not saying everybody's lives are good. We've all got struggles. We've all got difficulties. Different parts of them. Some people have the more objective difficulties, specific objective financial difficulties, for specific objective health difficulties. Not to make light of that by any means. But to be aware of the enormous percentage of people who actually don't have that level of objective difficulty, who are not actually living in such abject poverty that they don't know where their next meal will come from, that they don't know how they're going to educate their children, who are not living on the brink of death due to terminal illness, and yet who are deeply dissatisfied with their lives. And that's an epidemic. Being satisfied doesn't mean that you don't have any goals. It doesn't mean being complacent. It simply means that here in this moment, I'm enough. And yeah, I've got a goal for next moment. Be more, do more, great. But I'm not sitting here in this moment stewing in dissatisfaction. Because when I am, again, I'm very easily co-opted. Because it's really difficult to accept that my dissatisfaction is of my own making. That it's my own mind that has actually created my dissatisfaction. I'd love to blame it on somebody else. I'd love to have a scapegoat for my dissatisfaction. And if someone comes in and says, these people are the problem, I mean, that's how Hitler got really good, honest, nice Germans to become agents of death. The psychology of co-opting people who happen to be going through a period of dissatisfaction, post-World War I, Depression age, Germany was just not a time for a lot of satisfaction for people. And the minute that he could say, these people, they're the reason you're poor, they're the reason for this, they're the reason for that. Okay, a scapegoat. And we know where that went. And so this is where dissatisfaction becomes not just tragic, but lethal. As long as we have people trying to co-opt our dissatisfaction, if they didn't exist, it would just be sad, you'd just be wasting your life. But it actually now is lethal because it becomes a tool in the hands of people who know exactly what they're doing and who know exactly how to co-opt your dissatisfaction for their benefit. And so the spiritual practice is essential on every level. We then start voting better, which changes immediately our political system. But But I want to bring in one last point here. Politics is not all only about votes. There's an intricate and intimate relationship between money and power, as we know. And so we don't only vote with our votes, we also vote with our money. And that which we spend our money on, the companies, the industries that are creating situations that are ripe for further conflict. For example, if I'm an industry and my goal is to provide items at the absolute cheapest cost so that I can make as much money as possible, well, in order to do that, I can't pay fair wages. I can't use healthy materials. I've got to cut every possible corner I can if I'm going to sell it at the cheapest cost and still make money. Which means I run sweatshops. It means I run child labor. It means the materials I use are toxic, which means that the people who work for me are in horrendous conditions. And these are the populations that again get very easily co-opted into violence. If children were in school, getting good education that they didn't have to pay for if their parents didn't have the money to pay for it, we wouldn't have so many children with guns fighting wars. And so situations like bonded labor, sweatshops, and violence, they actually feed off of each other. If I'm going to overthrow the people who are running the next village, let's say, I decide we're going to take over the next village, whether it's on the basis of race or religion or whatever it may be. We're going to create conflict. We're going to create war. I'm going to take their land. Well, I've got to have somebody fight battles for me because I don't want to die. I'm not going to go out and stand there on the front lines and put my life at risk. The people who are going to become my soldiers are the people who are aggrieved, the people who are dissatisfied, the people who are suppressed and oppressed. So when I go to them and I say, yeah, the reason you are working in sweatshops, the reason that you are working as slaves is because those people are in charge, because those people are stealing the good jobs, they're stealing the money, whatever it may be. Come and fight with me. We'll train you. We're going to take back the power. Well, suddenly that sounds real good. So they actually go hand in hand, which is where, for those of us who have the luxury to choose, who have the luxury to decide what brand of clothes we buy or shampoo we use, it's actually not just a choice of preference. It's not just about, oh, that supermodel uses this brand. I want to, look just like her, so I'm going to buy the same brand of shampoo she uses. There's actually a moral responsibility inherent in having the privilege of shopping, of making decisions. And that moral responsibility is to use our money, to spend our money on items produced by companies who are not sowing seeds of misery, of poverty, of despair, of conflict, or of environmental degradation, of polluted water, of polluted soil, of polluted air. That's a responsibility every one of us who has the luxury to choose has. And so we vote in the voter box, and we vote with our money every time we go to the store. And so that's what we get to do. And for you working actually in the conflict zones, the more in touch you can get people with themselves, with that which is right and whole and okay in this moment within themselves, the less they're going to feel the need to pick up a gun and kill someone to make it right in the next moment. The more oneness we can feel with people of different colors and races and religions, obviously the less likely we are to pick up guns and kill them, or to allow ourselves to be hijacked into somebody else's movement. So they go beautifully together. And when we talk about building really a future, a peaceful future, a bright future, we have to have both. It has to be on the individual level, and it has to be on the international political level. Both. Yeah. Wonderful. Have a wonderful rest.